Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. For those on the call who I haven't met, I'm Mara Larson Fleming, Director of Health and Wellness for Oakland Unified School District. It's my honor to be here with you today on Wellness Wednesday to really lift up wellness of our educators. We know how hard you're all working to balance work and home and family and all of the other commitments. And this is true for educators, but COVID-19 and sheltering in place has really brought a unique set of stress and challenges. So my hope today really is for the next hour, really seen and cared for. And in this spirit, it's my pleasure to introduce Kelly Kanoki, Executive Director of the Teaching Well. Kelly is a former Oakland educator and founded the Teaching Well to the well-being and retention of educators. Kelly has been a really invaluable thought and action partner for us in OUSD as we design and build staff wellness initiatives and interventions. You may have met her through or her team through work that they're doing directly with schools, or you may have met her through a training she provided to staff wellness champions. And I just wanted to give a shout out to any wellness champions on the line today. We love you all. With that, I will turn it over to Kelly to share a little bit more about herself and her work and to lead us through our session today on managing stress and uncertainty in the time of COVID-19. Thank you.
And allowing me to be on this call. I'm a former, she said, I'm a former OUSD educator. I worked at Westlake Middle School as a 6th grade math and science teacher. And then I spent a couple years at Life Academy building a social emotional curriculum. And so the entire organization of the Teaching Well was started by teachers for teachers, and specifically by Oakland teachers for Oakland teachers. So I'm really excited to be able to share some knowledge that we've culminated over the last 5 years, and to be able to give you guys some time to build relationship with each other, because I think that that has been one of the biggest connecting threads for me through this incredibly uncertain time. I'd like to just also share some context of my surroundings and share best practice of relating. I am currently in Tucson. My partner's kids are here, and so we felt it was really important during this time of uncertainty to be closer to his young ones. And I also, you might see my crutches in the background, a week before shelter in place broke my ankle. And so I have not only been navigating this time of uncertainty with the emotions and the work related content, but also with just the uncertainty of my ability physically. So I have been working to practice all of the tools that I'll be sharing with you today. And I'm looking forward to hearing the tools that you have. One of the ways that I've been making my way through this challenging time is by doing art. And so I hope to make you laugh and maybe inspire you or maybe bring you joy by having this presentation mostly be art-based. So just art visuals that I've created. So I hope you enjoy that. So I'm going to start sharing my screen so we can go over some agreements. And then we'll do a guided meditation and head into the workshop today. You now can see my screen. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can now see my PowerPoint slides that so many of you are on? Okay. I'm getting a thumbs up. Awesome. So I'm going to present that screen so that you can see it on your screen as well. Letting it load. So the goal of this PD is just to understand how our body and our emotions navigate uncertainty, and then giving you guys time to build relationship and have tools in your toolkit to help regulate your nervous system during this uncertain time. There's a link to the living document, and that's once again in the chat box, but you can also click in the PowerPoint slides for that. And I want to just go over the agreements. So there's 3 agreements for this time, and the first one is to be body liberatory. So we are in a gallery situation, so if you need to move your body, I fully encourage that. You can stretch, you can eat, you can drink, you need to go to the bathroom, go for it. My invitation is that you turn your camera off if you move, so that people can stay focused on the presentation. And keep yourself on mute. We will have time for breakout sessions. It'll be over 15 minutes of you getting to share and listen to other educators, because I actually think that is the recipe for connection and feeling good. So feel free to make sure that your body is and your needs are getting met today. Another agreement we have is just being open to learning. So I know that I'm on the call with expert educators who create amazing social emotional spaces for their youth every day, and have probably already transitioned to virtual learning and have found ways to connect with your young people. And so I'm inviting you to both be open to learning something you already know, but learning in a different way, or being able to share your expertise in the chat box. If there's an idea, that question that comes up, or an idea that's being shared, feel free to really engage in the chat box, so that we are not just learning in one, from one way, but we're learning from each other through this practice. I also want to name the concept of the zone of proximal development. So most of us are quite out of our comfort zone by this point in the coronavirus. But I really want to make sure that throughout this PD, specifically when we go through some guided meditation, that you're staying in your growth zone. And so I see this is my visual of zone of proximal development. If you get to a place where it feels like you get uncomfortable in your body, you feel frustrated, you feel like a groan, ouch, trigger, that means that we've stepped out of the growth zone and into what I call the groan zone. And I'm going to invite you right now to think of some exit ramps that you can use for yourself to come back into your body and to soothe your internal system. So that could be, turning off your video for a second, or standing up and walking around. That could just be disregarding something that I've shared on the meditation and going on your own personal journey, or just connecting back into your breath. And maybe just leaning back from the screen. So before I move further, I'd love for you to think through what an exit ramp would be for you, and give me a thumbs up if you found an exit ramp for yourself before we go further in this PD, just in case you need it. I'm scrolling through. I see some thumbs up. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. The final agreement that I have for you all today is to ask for what you need. So whether that's time in breakout sessions, or a question that you have, please share it in the chat box, or raise your hand. Mara will be moderating the chat box, and she will kind of chime in if I miss a question, or if there's a theme coming up in questions that I might not answer. And then 2, once again, we've got a ton of experts on this call. And so be willing to offer your expertise. If someone asks a question that you already have the answer to, or you've answered it within yourself, feel free to put that in the chat box, so that we can build best practices together. Okay. So with that said, I'm going to have us lead into a guided meditation together. And I want to just be clear with meditations. It's always an invitation. And at any time, if anything that I share during this meditation doesn't work for you, feel free to navigate and have autonomy in your body. We're going to be doing some guided into the body, and then I'm going to have you open your eyes and look around your environment. Okay, and just to preview where we're headed. And afterwards, we're going to get to check in with other educators on the call to be able to share about our experience and just share where we are today. Okay, so if you feel comfortable, I'm going to invite you to turn off your video. And I'm going to invite you to resituate yourself in your chair. Maybe that means that you lean back into your chair. Maybe that means that you sit up taller. But I'm just going to invite you back into your body. And if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, and begin to notice the breath as it moves out of the nose or mouth. And throughout this entire meditation today, you could just sit right here observing the sensation of the breath from this place, remembering the exit ramps before we get too far. And then I'm going to invite you, for those of us that feel comfortable, to follow the breath into the body. Feeling the throat expand and contract with the breath. Feeling the chest rise and fall. And as we focus in on the breath, feeling the belly expand and contract. Following the breath into the body, imagining it reaches all the way to your fingers and toes. And if any thoughts, emotions, or tension arise, lengthen that exhale to observe them, embrace them, and let them go if you can, or if you want. And as we focus on the breath, our senses heighten, feeling the clothes on your skin, hearing sounds in your environment. And from this sensitivity or noticing, I'm going to ask you to just visualize a connection between you and your computer. What does it feel like to be in relationship with this device? Maybe you imagine that there's a rope connected to you, to the computer. Maybe it's a vine. Maybe it's an actual living organism like an animal. Getting details on what it looks like, what that connection looks like for you. And seeing how you have a relationship with this device. So unique and different now that COVID-19 is here. And when you've gotten really rich in detail, I'm going to invite you to disconnect that cord, that organism from your body and just gently place it down. You can imagine cutting it. You can imagine just it slowly falling away and allowing you to lean back into your chair or lean away from the computer. And feel your energy come back from the computer into your body. Lengthening your spine, taking a deep breath in. And with this extra energy, wiggling the fingers and toes. And beginning to reach the arms overhead, stretching the body. Maybe for the first time today, and maybe for the third time today. But allowing yourself, your body to come back online. Checking in with your shoulders, doing gentle shoulder rolls, checking in with the neck, rolling the wrists, who've been doing so much more labor than they usually do. And without looking at your computer, I'm going to invite you to flutter your eyes open and look around your environment. Using the spectrum of light as our guide, I'm going to invite you to find an object in your environment that's the color red. Looking around your environment, finding the color orange. Looking around your environment to find the color yellow. Finding the color green. Finding the color blue. And ending with the color purple. Taking a deep breath here, just noticing your surroundings, noticing the change in sensation with this way of seeing. And then one more time, you can either close the eyes or just do a soft gaze towards the computer. I want you to reconnect with your computer, with this strength in your body, and think about 1 to 2 people or activities that bring you joy that this computer allows you to communicate with. And from that place of joy, I invite you to recreate the connection between the computer and you, knowing that this technology stresses our system and is a miracle. It allows us to support our students and be in relationship with others and our family during this challenging time. When you're ready, gently opening your eyes, turning back on your video. And if you feel comfortable in the chat box, just noticing, sharing any of the sensations or things that you noticed about that meditation that provided support for you. And so at the Teaching Well, one of the things that we think is really important is that our bodies are incredibly intelligent, and that oftentimes, especially as care providers, where we are so attuned to serving the needs of others, that oftentimes our mind can forget about caring for ourselves, and that our body oftentimes will let us know when we need to care for ourselves and fill our cup so that we can fill other people's cup. And so we use this tool of scanning the body and sharing how our body speaks through sensation. So temperature, places that feel hot and cold; weight, places that feel heavy or loose or light; color, tension, or emotions. And so this is stuff that you can just mind. Maybe you're exploring what you feel in your body right now and what you notice that you didn't notice before. And you'll have time to share in your small group about this. So I'm going to thank you for minding my art. You're going to get time in groups of 3 to 4 to share where you are. So you're going to share your name, your school, how you and your community are today, and anything that came up for you in the mindfulness activity. So maybe an intention that you have or a question you want to learn. I'm going to ask you for that first minute to select a timer so that everyone gets equal space in your group of 4. And then I'm also going to invite one person to be the note taker. And what you're going to do is, obviously we want to create confidential space, but the note taker, if there's emerging themes or questions that are coming up in your group, I invite that person to fill it out in the chat box so that I can make sure to be able to share if we can answer those questions, or if we maybe need to hold on to those to answer them later. You're going to then spend the second half of that 12 minutes to choose a somatic community building tool. And this slide, there's a link in the PowerPoint to this, and then there's also a link in your living document. And slides 4 through 7 have these fun icebreaker activities, and I wanted to let you guys practice them and find one that works for you in your group of 4. So Kenneth is going to split you into your breakout groups now. Are there any questions before we transition? And Mara, if you could share them with me, because when I'm sharing my screen, I can't see.
I don't think there are any questions in the chat.
Great. All right, Kenneth, if you can break everyone into groups of 4.
Or will the directions be in the breakout room is one of the questions.
That's a great.
It's in the living document that's linked at the top and midway through the chat, and we can link them again here at the bottom.
Yep. We're all back. So note takers, if you haven't shared yet, I'd love for you to put in the chat box things that you, things, emerging themes that came up in your group, or maybe one of those activities from the somatic PowerPoint brainstorm that you want to use with your students.
And Kelly, I'm wondering if you want, I know some groups had a little bit of a hard time figuring out what the instructions were, and kind of grounding in the breakout room. So I'm wondering if you just want to share briefly what those somatic
Yeah.
community activities are.
All right. So I'm sharing the presentation with you so you can look that up on your own. But one of the things that I think is our bodies are trained to mirror other people in our environment. And on computers, what we end up doing is we are engaging with something that actually doesn't mirror, right? It's like our whole nervous system is actually just not evolved to engage over computer. And so these activities are ways to bring your community circle into your environment. So the tool that we used was Mirror the Mime, where you have someone start creating a shape on their screen like I'm doing, and then you have everyone mirror it. And so now I'm connecting my physical body to someone else's, and we're creating a rhythm. Another one is to have people tour their houses, tour their like desks areas. Um, and those are there's like 4 different activities that I invite you to look at and see which ones appeal to you to bring to your young people. I'm looking over the emerging themes and just a really clear desire to be with community and feel support. And people feeling social isolation, being at their work environment. So even though we might be serving students, we might be all alone at our home, or we might be in homes where there was maybe tension pre-COVID, and so home is not necessarily the safe place that that it can be for, or is stereotypically thought of. And so we just really want to acknowledge that, and that can be a part of the experience. And I'm also hearing that routines and hobbies are really important. And I'll share a little bit with you later on about how I agree that routines and hobbies can make a huge difference in your life. But before I share that, I'm going to kind of just share some context and share from a physiological place about how this is impacting our bodies, and how this is impacting our system. And then we'll go into some solutions from there. Okay, so just give you some language. I'm going to share my screen again, and you'll see that I'm on the somatic slides that are linked in the living document, and they're also linked into the chat box. 4 through 7 are the ones that I would suggest are a really great tool to bring to your young people. But I'm going to move back to my PowerPoint slide and present. And so I first just really want to name some context that got brought up in my small group, and I'm sure you're sharing with your school communities. That first, I really want to just acknowledge our state and city systems for how we flattened the curve. We went into shelter in place earlier than most areas, and because of that, I feel really confident that a majority of our society is safer because of it. And that is really due to frontline healthcare workers and people like you, educators, who are going on the front line to make sure that our young people have tech, and that they are still getting in access to services. So for our community health centers that are on sites, you guys are making sure that infrastructure is in place. And what is also true is we're still at the beginning, and there are still inequitable outcomes. As you can see, this is from the East Bay Express, that the cases of COVID-19 map along lines of socioeconomic status and is disproportionately affecting people of color and Indigenous communities. And so, one of the themes that was coming up in our group was really about the guilt that can happen as a frontline care provider when we see people who have less resource and less safety than us, and really having this strong desire to make sure that we do whatever we can to serve the needs of our families, and also knowing, a part of us knowing, because we're all on this call together today, that we have to continue to resource ourselves because this is going to be an endurance marathon. And we are just at the beginning of this journey. And so one of the things that really helps me understand this context is just that COVID-19 is a collective trauma. And what I mean by collective trauma is a experience that happens in our external environment where it overwhelms our nervous system and our body cannot create safety for ourselves. So for some people, that is actually contracting this illness. And for others, it's the financial insecurity, it's the fear of actually getting sick, the loss of routine, food insecurity, exposure of the violent and harmful structures that are have always, I think, been lifted in Oakland, but ultimately are being seen at a national and global scale. And so our bodies, in response to not being able to create safety within ourselves in our normal ways, are trying to process that collective trauma through a variety of ways. So it could be in the disease. It could be that we're getting angry at just having to be at home. We could be in grief. We could feel anxiety. We could be feeling guilt and trying to fix it. And for me, I just put myself on there with a broken foot as I feel a deep connection of what I'm learning about how I usually respond to trauma, which is to try and move my body, that I can't do that anymore. So I'm finding these new ways, like drawing art, to process this really uncertain and scary time. And I just want to also lift that educators, we might be safe in our environment, but feeling the impact of not being able to keep our students safe, and that this is a form of vicarious trauma and is a part of the collective trauma experience. And so it's important to lift up. And it's also one of the things that is really powerful about somatic work, which is this idea that we can transmute trauma through the body, is that we can really trust the body when safety is created to be able to release some of this overwhelm. And I want to just really share about my kind of this view of the marathon. So we're just at this first part of the journey, and I kind of split the journey into 3 parts. So this first part is response or crisis, where we are responding quickly towards safety and support for those that are most vulnerable. So getting the tech out, understanding how to go to virtual learning, it's really about how to do it. And as frontline providers in times of crisis, we oftentimes don't have the time or feel like we can create the time to take care of ourselves or prioritize our own needs. And after everything has gotten structured, the infrastructure has gotten stabilized, the next phase is recovery, where we have stabilized, but the frontline care providers, the educators, we are going to have to invest in, I'm seeing that sharing has been paused. Hold on 1 second. Bring my window to the front.
We can still see it.
You can still see it? Okay, hold on, resume share. Beautiful, thank you. So in this time, I'm feeling like it was my phone connecting. I apologize for that. We are really responsible, and this could be over the summer, but this could also even be starting now, to help our bodies, our emotions, our minds recover from this really great change, so that when next year's schooling starts, which is still incredibly uncertain, we're going to take the learnings from this moment and internalize them into new systems of support and care. But in order for us to reimagine a new way, our nervous systems have to be regulated. So we have to feel a sense of well-being in our body in order to be able to activate the executive functioning of our brain to create new ways for our students to succeed. And so over the course of the next 5 or 10 minutes, I'm going to be giving you some tools to talk about stress. And when I'm talking about stress, which is in its original term just meant the desire to act or perform, what it means in this moment and what you can just map on is uncertainty, financial instability, connecting with humans through screens, these things that were not in our environment prior to COVID that are now asking our bodies, asking our emotions to perform in a whole new way. And so those stressors are are new and different, and it gives us a bigger advocacy for releasing stress at small points through the day so that we can stay working at our best. And the human function curve is a way that I talk about it, and I bet there's some people on this call that have seen this visual before. Can people put in the chat box a 0, meaning I've never seen this visual, or a 3, where it's like I've been to a couple trainings or I've done my own research on the human function curve. And Mara, could you look at the chat box for me and let me know what the average number is or the range?
I think you have a lot of zeros, so there's a lot of folks there's a few people who are pretty familiar, but a lot of folks who've never seen it.
Awesome.
Okay. I've never seen it.
Awesome. So this is a tool that I and thousands of educators now use to be able to talk about stress before it's too late. One of the things that I noticed when I was a young teacher is that I didn't really know how to talk about when I was feeling work stress until I was really frustrated at a young person, or I was really frustrated at my colleague or my administrator, and I just had to let it out somewhere. And so this is a tool that I've used and a tool that other educators have used to be able to have conversations about stress before stress gets too big. And because I'm in an artistic phase, I have broken it down into some visuals. So the y-axis is performance. So how effectively you perform at the stressor. So how you respond to the stressor is the y-axis. The x-axis is how many stress signals your brain is receiving. So if I have nothing to act or perform for, I'm at 0 on this graph. But as there's things in my environment where I want to act and perform for, I keep increasing into my up to a point. And then I hit that point, and then any other stressor that comes into my environment ends up decreasing my performance. So even though I intend to perform at this super high level because of all of the needs and desires that I want to care for, I'm actually not showing up the way I want to. So this could look like, and I want to be preface, no educator or student is currently residing on the left side of this curve. So if there is a guilt or a fear like you're not doing enough, or if you actually took time off, you wouldn't be performing for young people or for the communities that we serve, I would highly encourage you to be confident that you are not going to be heading into a lack of stress area. But what I think is really true is that for those of us that are so committed to serving other people and haven't been able to, are finding or missing that balance of caring for ourselves while caring for others, that we can take on stressors and end up being like this orange arrow, where we're performing and we're cycling at a place that's actually not our peak performance, even though we intend to perform at a greater level. And so all of this is an encouragement to be able to take 2, 3, 5 minutes to an hour to relinquish stress during the course of your workday and after work hours, so that you can be at this blue circle that's just for you. Right? Where you are at the peak level of your performance, and that you feel like you have energy and vitality for changes and uncertainty to come your way throughout the day, and for it to not break you down into frustration. And one of the PDs that we do, we dive deeper into this human function curve, where you can kind of map your emotional body and what you're feeling in your body. In that workshop, but we're going to dive into solutions today, given the time. So we're going to skip this breakout because I really want us to stay connected to the content, and there's more than enough content to share. So we're going to practice any way and any time we can to move left on the human function curve. And I'm going to give us a framework for how to do that, and then ways we can act that out. So for me in my life, the first thing that I can do is to observe the whole spectrum of what my life's offering me. So observe doesn't mean judge it. It doesn't mean change it. It doesn't mean fix it. It just means what's here right now. How do I feel about work? How do I feel in my body? How do I feel emotionally today? And just be an observation. And when I've had that observation, when I've gotten that noticing, and so for me, sometimes it's like all of a sudden the screen gets fuzzy around 2 p.m. And then that's a place I can observe and go, oh, my body is telling me that I'm feeling I need to disconnect from my computer right now. And when I get that fuzzy eye feeling at 2 p.m., the second thing I can do is accept that that feeling means something and I need to come back and care for myself, or I need to care for somebody else. So, embrace might be a word. You're like, I don't want to embrace my anger. That's like not it for me. So feel free to use a word where it's that I observe, and without judgment, I accept and understand that this is something that's true in my body and my emotions right now. And once you've done that, you have the opportunity, rather than to react because we haven't acknowledged our stress for a long time, we then get to respond. And so we get to be with what we're feeling and we get to act. So these are 6 different ways that I've found helpful for myself to regulate stress, is to organize things, breathe, create, move, speak, or be in nature. And I'm going to dive deeper into what that looks like. So these are, once again, you have all these slides so you can look at them later. So we've already practiced today the breathing action through our guided meditation. So connecting to our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our like relax and digest nervous system. You can do that by lengthening your exhale and take deeper breaths. If taking breaths and breathing is not a thing for you, taking a 15-minute nap will totally, once you fall asleep, you're totally going to be able to do that deep breathing for yourself. And it could just be that you close your eyes on your couch, but that you give yourself some time to reduce the stimulus of a screen or of a connection with a young person or a connection with a colleague or a family member, that you kind of like insulate your environment. If you need apps to help you, Calm, Headspace, Audible are great tools to be able to reconnect. Insight Timer is one that I love to use. And then if you want to help your young people breathe, Go Noodle is a really great resource that has come up in previous webinars that people like to lift. And that kind of takes us to the move section. So in the, our body, how it has evolved to respond to trauma and release trauma is actually through movement. So, trauma release exercises, TRE, is a great thing to explore right now if you're wanting to release sensation in your body, but also going on a walk, running, yoga, dance, improv, and for me, arm cardio, because I can't walk right now, is a way for you to, without talking to anybody, allow yourself to release some of the tension of being in your house and in shelter in place. And so I highly recommend that. If you increase your heart rate to a point where you have to breathe heavy, and you can hold that for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, your body is going to actually be doing the work of transmuting collective trauma for you. So I highly recommend movement. Another place that I want to lift up is organization. So for some of us, organizing is like actually a stressor, but for many of us, organizing our desk, our budget, Google Drive is organized to be present with people. And this could also be for your young people, in their space. So can translate, communicate with young people, their own people. Oh my God, I cleaned my room while I was listening to you. She hadn't been. I know I need. That's the biggest gift we can offer, is in a 15-minute time window, what can I do to care for myself and to reset environment or my internal environment to feel connected? And that leads me to speaking. So for us who are providers, oftentimes highly attuned to what other people and not as attuned to what we need. And we might be able to, we might be sharing, be able to like meet the needs of people in our environment, but haven't don't feel comfortable requesting what we need or getting advice. And so I just really encourage you to, maybe there's another teacher or a friend in your life where you can just say, can I have 15 minutes to just talk about what's going on for me? And just let yourself have a place to vent. If you don't feel like, if you're more isolated or you don't feel like you have that safe space device on your computer, it. And then also seeing small requests. It could be as small as asking if you have a partner at your house, asking them to, right? Or, requesting during a meeting, I actually need to go to the bathroom. Can we just put this on hold for 3 minutes? Or can I eat while we're on this call? Right? So it's the small asks. You allow yourself to be in dialogue with your environment. Those can actually release stress, especially for care providers who we maybe have stilled or by being in a classroom and not being able to bathroom for like 5 hours a day, right? Or we only have 10 minutes to eat while we like go between recess and lunch, right? So I really want to support you in asking for what you need right now, since there's a little bit more autonomy and flexibility. And then the last place is to create. So art, food, crafts, journaling, laughter, really takes time to build your hobbies and crafts, and to kind of allow emotion to move through you by creating things and creating love for other people. I think I just want to lift up routines too. Waking up at the same time, taking an hour is kind of organized self-care category, and can provide a rhythm to our day that allows us to feel less overwhelmed by choices. Get any options. So routines allow us, especially as educators who give routine to other people all the time and actually have routines ourselves that way, create a schedule for yourself, and creating a schedule that works for your needs is going to be a really powerful tool during this time. That I created and the idea of care is a tool, it's frontline care providers, where we have relinquished self as a profession to care for other people, but it's also the end for the collective. And so when caring for other people in the way that we all do as a role is actually a really important part of our own self-care. And so it goes back and forth, but what is really important is that I've been thinking this word herd immunity. She's like, oh, the COVID-19, according to science, we don't have herd immunity because we don't have a vaccination for inoculated to the fear and uncertainty and isolation that I was experiencing in my life. So as educators who are serving so many young people to create herd immunity and that fear and overwhelm by caring for ourselves and staying empowered so that we can emulate knowing that there's mass inacts that we are working with, that we can immune ourselves to the fear and worry that's here. You want to leave for other care, or one tool that you just received as activity, and then I will open it up for just one question, perhaps 2 questions, and maybe those come in the talks as well.